Hey there, welcome back to Karen Strikes Again, the channel where neighborly nightmares come to life. Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked out at your backyard, felt proud of your space and thought, yeah, this is mine, my hard work, my little slice of peace? Well, I used to feel the same way. Until one morning, I noticed something strange. It started with a single wooden stake in the ground. At first, I thought it was left behind by a landscaper or maybe a surveyor who got the wrong house. No big deal, right? But then came the second one, then the third, and by the end of the day, there were bright orange flags, measuring tape, and spray-painted lines running all across my backyard. It looked like someone was planning a construction project on my property. I stepped outside, heart racing, trying to figure out what was going on. That's when I saw her, standing by the fence, sipping her smoothie, clipboard in hand, was none other than Karen. The woman who once tried to turn my yard into a community garden. Now she was back, with a smug grin, and she wasn't done yet. What was she planning this time? Why were there markings all over my yard? And more importantly, how did she even get permission to do anything back there? Buckle up. This story, it's just getting started. I didn't sleep much that night. Even though I had pulled the stakes out and tossed the flags into the trash, the unsettling feeling didn't leave me. It's one thing to deal with passive-aggressive notes or HOA newsletter nonsense. It's another thing entirely when someone physically alters your property. The next morning, I decided to take action. I printed out my property deed, highlighted the backyard boundaries, and headed straight to the HOA office. Of course, who do I see standing behind the reception desk? Karen, clipboard in hand, smirk in place, sunglasses on, even though we were indoors. I approached calmly. Hey, I'd like to speak with someone about unauthorized surveying on my lot. Karen barely looked up. Oh, that was for the community's garden project. We've already voted on it. I blinked. You voted to use my land without my consent? She sighed. Look, it's in the minutes. The HOA approved expansion onto shared greenbelt access. Your yard backs right up to it. I handed her my deed. No, it doesn't. This line, see this? This shows the fence is well within my property. You're trespassing. Karen barely glanced at the paper. Well, if you have a problem, you'll need to bring it up at the next HOA meeting. I clenched my jaw. When's that? She smiled wider. Thursday evening. I suggest you come. Prepared. And that whole interaction set off alarm bells. I wasn't just dealing with a nosy neighbor. I was dealing with someone who was used to getting away by steamrolling everyone around her. And the worst part, she had influence, real influence. That evening, I started talking to other neighbors. I wanted to see who actually supported this so-called garden project. The answers were mixed. Some shrugged. I thought it was a city thing. Others said, Karen told us you'd already agreed to it. One guy, bless him, just laughed. You said yes to Karen? Man, rookie mistake. Turns out Karen had been telling everyone that I was on board with the project, that it was all moving forward with my full support. She was manipulating the entire neighborhood, and now I was the bad guy for suddenly changing my mind. The kicker: later that night, I received a formal warning via email from the HOA. Not only did it reference the garden project, but it also accused me of deliberately interfering with a community initiative by removing the flags. That was the final straw. I knew I had to get ahead of this and fast. Karen was trying to rewrite the narrative. If I didn't push back hard, she'd have the whole neighborhood believing I was the one causing problems. So I did what any sane, fed-up homeowner would do. I started building my case. I gathered every photo I'd taken, every video clip, every timestamp. I drafted a timeline of events. I even pulled emails and texts from neighbors confirming they had no idea I was never consulted. Because Thursday's HOA meeting, it wasn't going to be business. As usual, it was going to be war. Thursday arrived faster than I'd hoped. I walked into the HOA meeting 15 minutes early, binder in hand, armed with evidence, photos, emails, the whole 9 yards. I expected to see a few concerned neighbors, maybe a board member or two, but I didn't expect Karen sitting at the head of the table. She wasn't just attending the meeting. She was running it. I took a seat near the back, stunned. One of my neighbors leaned over and whispered, "Did you not hear? Karen was appointed acting HOA chair last week, temporary until the next election." Of course she was. This wasn't a meeting. It was a setup. Karen called the meeting to order with the same fake smile she wore the day she handed me that friendly note about my lawn height. "Let's begin," she said, flipping through her packet. First item, Community Enhancement Proposal 4B, shared greenbelt usage for the new Garden for Growth initiative. I raised my hand immediately. "I'd like to speak on that." Karen barely looked at me. Public comments come after board discussion. What followed was a parade of confusion. Several board members mumbled support for the garden. One of them asked, "Wasn't the homeowner of the affected lot okay with this?" Karen didn't answer. I stood up. No, I wasn't. And I never was. All heads turned. I walked to the front, placed my binder on the table and opened it. "I'd like to go on record," I said clearly, "that this project was never presented to me for consent. This is my property. My deed shows that the backyard in question does not touch any greenbelt, and I have photographic proof that the HOA, under Karen's leadership, trespassed." I passed out copies of the deed and photos. Karen tried to interrupt. "We voted," without notice, without consent, and with false claims about my support, which, I might add, you used to justify sending warning letters and making alterations to my land. One of the board members leaned forward. "Karen, did you inform him officially before beginning work?" Karen's voice was sharp now. "It was discussed at the last meeting." "The notes are in the minutes." Another member raised an eyebrow. "The meeting where only 3 people showed up?" She didn't answer. I continued. "Multiple neighbors told me Karen claimed I had agreed to this. That's false. She used that lie to push this forward." Then I dropped the final bomb. According to Section 7 of the HOA Charter, any modification to privately deeded property requires signed consent from the homeowner and majority board approval. I've provided neither. Dead silence. Karen turned red. Another board member, the treasurer, I think, looked over the deed. "He's right. This doesn't even touch the easement. It's private property." That's when Karen lost her composure. "He's exaggerating. It's just a garden," the treasurer calmly replied. "It's trespassing. That's not a grey area." Karen stood up. "You're all making a huge deal out of nothing. I was trying to improve the community." A quiet voice from the back spoke up. "It was Jenna, my next-door neighbor. Improving the community doesn't mean bulldozing people's boundaries." A wave of agreement rippled through the room. Heads nodded. Whispers started. And Karen? She sat back down, tight-lipped, defeated. But not done. The board voted unanimously to suspend the garden initiative, pending legal review. They also opened a formal inquiry into Karen's conduct. It wasn't a full win yet, but it was a turning point. As the meeting wrapped up, Karen shot me a look, not angry, not smug, just cold. This wasn't over. I could see it in her eyes. I thought the HOA meeting would be the end of it. I mean, how much more damage could she do? The project was suspended. The board was finally paying attention. I even got a few handshakes and supportive nods on my way out. But with Karen, there's always a next move. 2 days later, I woke up to the sound of my wife yelling from the kitchen. "Babe, did you see this?" She was holding a letter, no envelope, no HOA letterhead, just a printed sheet taped to our front door. It read, "Warning. Certain homeowners in our community are not cooperating with community enhancement projects. Please be advised that selfish actions may result in HOA re-evaluation of privileges and shared access. Concerned residents for neighborhood integrity." I laughed at first. Concerned residents? Come on, this had Karen written all over it. That same morning, 3 of my other neighbors got identical flyers taped to their mailboxes. The ones who had spoken in my favor at the meeting. It was petty. It was ridiculous. It was Karen. Later that afternoon, I went to pull my trash bin from the curb and noticed something strange. Someone had scratched the words, "No community spirit," onto the lid in Sharpie. This wasn't just retaliation. It was targeted. Karen had gone full stealth mode mean girl. The public charm was gone. Now she was whispering poison behind the scenes, trying to paint me as the villain. Again, and for a while, it worked. A few neighbors got weirdly cold. One guy stopped saying hello. A woman across the street crossed to the other sidewalk when I came out. It was high school politics in HOA form, but instead of playing defense, I decided to go the other way. I hosted a backyard barbecue, no flyers, no banners. Just word of mouth. I knocked on a few doors, said, "Hey, we're grilling Saturday, come by if you're around." Simple, and to my surprise, people came, not everyone, but enough. Jenna brought drinks. Greg, the guy with the weird metal detector hobby, brought hot dogs. Even the retired couple who never leaves their porch stopped by for a plate. The energy was casual, light, like neighbors being neighbors again. We didn't talk about Karen, we didn't need to, but I noticed something across the street. Her blinds shifted. She was watching. A few days later, I got an official email from the HOA. They were opening a formal vote whether to remove Karen from the interim HOA chair position for conduct unbecoming of a board member. Apparently, someone on the board had filed the motion after reviewing her behavior, especially the unauthorized flyers. I didn't celebrate yet because I knew Karen. And when she's cornered, that's when she's most dangerous. Sure enough, the next week, the HOA sent out a notice about a special closed-door session. No details, no agenda, just a time and place. And when I asked what it was for, all I got was, "You'll find out soon enough." That's when I knew Karen wasn't done. She had one more card to play, and I had no idea what it was. The night of the closed-door session arrived, and I wasn't invited. None of the usual attendees were. No regular homeowners, no general board members. Just a handful of select individuals, and one of them was Karen. I waited, paced the house, checked the HOA app for updates. Nothing. Then at around 9 p.m. I got a text from Greg, the retired police officer on the board. "Heads up, Karen's trying something big. They're calling an emergency vote tomorrow." That was all he said. But it was enough to send me into full-on panic prep mode. The next morning, I showed up at the HOA office early, just as the meeting was about to start. It wasn't technically closed to homeowners, but the vibe was tense, like walking into a courtroom where you're the accused. Karen was already there, dressed sharper than usual, hair curled, clipboard replaced with a leather folio. She looked prepared, She called the meeting to order like she owned the place. "Item 1, she said, her voice calm. "A formal motion to revoke Mr. Thompson's HOA voting privileges for 6 months due to harassment of board members and obstruction of approved initiatives." I blinked. "What?" she continued. "Included in this motion are documented incidents of intimidation, slander, and disruption during board meetings. This vote ensures the HOA can proceed with future projects without interference." I raised my hand. "None of that is true." Karen didn't look at me. Public comments after board deliberation. They were trying to silence me. She was trying to kick me out of the system so I couldn't fight back anymore. Luckily, Greg stood up. "I'd like to challenge the motion," he said plainly. Karen frowned. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that the evidence she submitted is misleading. I've reviewed the footage from the previous meetings. The only person who raised their voice or spoke out of order was you, Karen." She stiffened. Another board member, Jenna, chimed in. "And those flyers? The ones taped to people's homes anonymously? We confirmed they were printed from your HOA login." Karen turned red. "That's hearsay. It's on the system log," Jenna replied. "We checked. The tide was..." Turning, Karen tried one last angle. "He's creating a toxic environment. The neighborhood is divided because of him." I stood up calmly. "No, it's divided because someone tried to take something that wasn't theirs, lied about it, then tried to punish the person who pushed back." Silence. Then Greg said the words I'll never forget. "I move that Karen be removed from the board effective immediately due to misconduct, abuse of power, and falsification of records." Someone seconded it. The vote was quick, unanimous. Karen didn't say a word. She gathered her folder, stood up slowly, and walked out of the room without even looking back. It was surreal. After all the chaos, all the drama, she was gone, but it wasn't satisfying. Not really. Because as much as she deserved to be held accountable, part of me wondered if that would really be the end of it. With Karen, you just never know. The days after Karen's removal were strangely quiet. There were no letters taped to doors, no passive-aggressive flyers, no sideways glances from neighbors who used to believe her spin. Just calm. For the first time since moving in, I could walk through my yard without feeling watched. The garbage can stayed untouched. Even the HOA newsletter seemed less rigid, written in plain English instead of lawyer speak. It was like the whole neighborhood had taken a collective breath. But while things looked normal on the surface, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. Karen didn't go down fighting. She went down silently. And that's what worried me most. Then one morning, as I stepped outside with my coffee, I saw a moving truck across the street, parked in front of Karen's house. At first, I thought maybe she was helping a friend. But then I saw her, Karen, in workout leggings and a sun visor, directing the movers with her usual clipped authority. She was leaving. I'll admit I was surprised. Karen didn't seem like the type to quit. But maybe she had decided the neighborhood wasn't worth the trouble anymore. Part of me felt relief. Part of me didn't. Around midday, I walked over to put my trash bins away and saw her standing by the moving truck, talking to one of the movers. Our eyes met. I gave her a polite nod, not smug, not petty, just neighborly. She hesitated, then nodded back. No words, but something passed between us in that moment. Maybe it was respect. Maybe it was the simple acknowledgement that we'd both been through something exhausting, and that maybe, just maybe, we were both tired of fighting. Later that evening I spoke with Greg. "She's heading to her sister's place out of state," he told me. said she needs a reset. I nodded. Think she'll be back? He shrugged. People like Karen, you never know, but something tells me she might be different after this. I wasn't sure what I believed. But for the first time in a long while, I wasn't bracing for the next surprise. I was just enjoying the peace. It's funny how quickly things go back to normal once the chaos is gone. A week after Karen moved out, the neighborhood felt lighter. People waved more. Kids played in front yards again. Someone even restarted the community newsletter, this time with actual recipes and event invites, not passive-aggressive reminders. Greg and I started chatting more often too. We weren't friends before all this, but shared battles tend to bring people closer. One evening, as we were both walking our dogs, he said something that stuck with me. You know, he began, I've seen a lot of people like Karen in my day. Folks who push too hard because they're scared to let go. Let go of what? I asked. Control. Pride. The idea that if they're not running things, they'll disappear. I thought about that for a moment. Maybe that was Karen's real problem all along. Not malice, but fear. Fear of losing relevance, of being left behind. She didn't know how to belong, so she tried to dominate instead. It doesn't excuse what she did, but it helps explain why she did it. And sometimes understanding someone, even someone like Karen, is the first step toward moving on without bitterness. Karen's house sat empty for a few weeks before a new family moved in. Young couple, 2 kids, a friendly golden retriever. The energy felt different, softer, like the neighborhood was breathing again. And though we didn't talk about it, much everyone seemed to know, a chapter had closed, but not all stories need a villain to stay interesting. Sometimes the ending is quiet, peaceful, uneventful in the best way. I never heard from Karen again. No emails, no angry letters, just silence. And that was enough, because sometimes the greatest victory isn't proving someone wrong. It's choosing to live right after the storm passes, to grow roots, to make peace, to reclaim your space. This wasn't the ending I expected, it was better. And if Karen ever finds peace of her own, wherever she ended up, I hope she learns what we all did. That true community isn't built through control, it's built through respect. And hey, if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what Karen might pull next. Because trust me, in this neighborhood, she's always got something brewing. Have you ever dealt with a neighbor like Karen, or worse, an HOA with too much power? Drop your stories in the comments below. I read every single one. Thanks for watching Karen Strikes. Again, where drama parks itself right on your lawn. Until next time, stay sharp, stand your ground, and never underestimate someone with a clipboard